Welcome back, Cozy Community. I am back again to read another chapter of Book 1 in the Jericho Falls Cozy Mysteries, A History of Murder. If you haven't started at the beginning, make sure you follow the links below so that you can just start at the beginning of the story, because today we're clear on Chapter 30, Sunshine, Glitter, and Cotton Candy. All right, let's get started. Officers Porter and Myers fingerprinted all the pertinent places in the Opera House. The fine gray powder they used left residue on doorways and flat surfaces here and there. "Will you be cleaning up before you leave?" Mariah asked them. "I'm trying to keep this place clean for the ball, you know." Officer Porter gave her a cool smile, but didn't make any promises. Porter's smile disappeared when she looked at me. Mariah was chewing on her bottom lip. "What are the chances the thief will come back? I'm here by myself all the time, now that Art's gone." "That's why you need to let the police do their job," I told her, "so they can find out who's responsible." Mariah gave me a nervous nod. "But at the same time," I said, "I don't think you should be here alone until this whole thing is over with." I might as well have told her, "Do as I say, not as I do." "I'll ask Luke to stay late or come in early with me," she planned. "He won't like it. He's got so much going on as it is, but so be it." "What else is he occupied with?" I asked. "His classes at LCC. He takes evening courses mostly, so he can work here during the day." A light bulb went on for me. If Luke went to LCC, maybe Leonard Dunning knew him. I'd like to get his opinion on the kid. "Teenagers are busy," I admitted. "Mostly with socializing, though, as I remember." "True, but he hasn't made a lot of friends since moving in with me." "He didn't want to live with your parents?" "We lost them in a car accident 2 years ago," she said quickly. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know." "It's been rough on Luke," she mumbled. Mariah seemed eager to discuss something different. "All of this trouble over a stupid old box of junk. I have a million things to do, and now I feel completely handcuffed." I was surprised she wasn't more sentimental about Art's belongings. Earlier, she seemed pretty emotional about his death. Grandma thought they were close. Maybe the stress of everything was getting to her. I, for one, was itching to know what crucial information might have been inside. Someone took it because it had to do with Art and his murder, right? Was it Malcolm? Luke? Or someone completely different? Mentally, I kicked myself. Even with everything I'd learned so far, Art's murder was still a complete mystery to me. The information from Fabiani's restaurant was a dead end. William Weston was in the clear, and now there was nothing to learn from the Opera House either. It was troubling. I gave Mariah a pat on the back. "I think I'll go home and see if Grandma Lily needs me for anything. Call me later with an update," I said. "Of course, go on, but thank you for coming. You've been a voice of reason. A real friend," she said. I smiled at her. I didn't have a lot of friends these days. It felt nice. I took the chance to slip out the door while Chief Garner talked with Officer Myers. I hopped in Grandma's car and started in the direction of Jericho House. When I approached the beauty salon, I spotted Bree opening the door and putting up a sandwich board stating, "Open, walk-ins welcome." She saw me too and waved. Her wave soon turned into a beckoning motion. I checked for cars, made a quick U-turn, and parked on the curb in front of her little shop. "Come on in," Bree sang. "I have a fresh pot of coffee and no one scheduled for another half hour." I prayed she wasn't luring me in for a cotton color after her comments when we first met. I wasn't in the market to change my hairdo. In fact, I wasn't particularly excited to socialize with Miss Perky Pants at all, but I did want the chance to see what she knew about the folks in town. Once through the door, I was immediately hit with the scent of cinnamon rolls, coffee, and permanent solution. Pink polka dot curtains adorned the windows. The floor was black and white checkerboard. Posters of Marilyn Monroe hung on the walls, along with quotes from the actress in hot pink cursive. One said, "Give a girl the right pair of shoes and she'll conquer the world." "This place fits you to a T. Did you decorate yourself?" As if there was a question. "Yep," Bree grinned. and gave a quick nod. Floor to ceiling, and I just love the view. She pointed out the large front window. Riverside Park with a mountain backdrop was right there. Isn't it fabulous? She sighed. It is beautiful, I admitted, staring out at the image that should be on a postcard. It's one of the things that convinced me to move to Jericho Falls for good, Bree said with a little stomp of her foot. The view? I questioned. Believe me, when you grow up in a big city and see something like this, there's no going back. She made a good point. Where did you grow up? I asked. Portland. My whole family's there. They don't understand why I want to live in this tiny old town. She giggled sweetly. What brought you to Jericho Falls in the first place? I asked. A girls' trip. We were driving to Las Vegas and passed through. I fell in love at first sight. With the view? I glanced back to the picture window. No, silly, Anthony, she said. We met in line at the Golden Grind Coffee House. I tried not to look surprised by this revelation. She went on. The moment I laid eyes on him, I knew he was the one. I went right up and told him so too. Then, ta-da, it happened. I forced a smile. What a love story. I know, right? So, you started dating long distance? I asked. I still wasn't sure how a chance encounter at the local coffee shop turned into an engagement. Bree blushed. Not exactly. When I got back home, I just couldn't stop thinking about him. So I surprised him. She threw her hands in the air with a grin. After I moved to town, it took a while, but eventually we started dating, and he realized that we were perfect for each other. Last month, I popped the question. I was having a hard time maintaining a smile. This didn't sound like true love at all. I was ready to change the subject. How did you become the owner of the salon? I asked. The woman who owned the shop was looking to retire and needed someone to buy it. I mean, fate, right? So I worked for her while I got my licenses. Then I took over. Anthony helped me get a business loan, and of course I did loads of updating and redecorating to get rid of the old lady vibe. She pinched her nose in disgust. I nodded and made an understanding expression. By the way, I heard about your little trip to Lakeview yesterday. Bree looked down her nose at me. Was this the real reason she asked me to come in? Anthony told you? I asked. Bree poured each of us a mug of coffee and handed me one. He said the two of you went there for old time's sake. Her chirpy facade had slipped slightly. I couldn't pinpoint why Anthony would bring up our trip to Bree. It only served to worry her. Maybe he didn't care, or maybe he wanted to. But my only agenda was to clear up any appearance of wrongdoing on my part and open up a conversation about art. That's not it, I said. She gasped. Her hot pink lipstick was now smudged on the edge of her coffee mug. I went there to learn about art's past. Anthony just offered to go along. Oh, Bree said with a look of relief. Did you learn anything about art? We talked to his old boss. I'm afraid it was a dead end, though. None of the information from him was helpful. I'm sorry, Bree said, and seemed to really mean it. I'm not surprised that Anthony offered to help you. He and Art were good friends. What? I asked. Anthony hadn't given me any indication of that. Over the past months, they'd become close, Bree explained. Anthony stopped by to see him at the Opera House all the time to visit. What would they discuss? I asked. She shrugged and straightened her cropped yellow cardigan. In some ways, I think Anthony saw Art as a father figure. It was a smart guess, considering his own dad was so critical of him. But, Bree continued, more than likely it had to do with business. Most of what Anthony does is about business. Why would Art be interested in Anthony's job as a commercial developer? I questioned. Bree sighed. No idea. I don't follow all that stuff, and luckily Anthony doesn't mind. He says he works all day and doesn't want to talk about it afterward. Better to focus on us. Isn't that romantic? Bree attempted to smile. Sure, romantic, I echoed. I couldn't help but wonder if the real reason Anthony didn't want to discuss his work with Bree was that it wasn't on the up and up. Was that possible? Bree began primping in her salon mirror. She freshened her lipstick and smoothed her hair. I'm so glad you're here for your grandma at a time like this. I just love Lily. She caught my eye in the mirror, puckered her mouth, and made a heart shape with her hands. Was Bree for real? If so, she was like sunshine, glitter, and cotton candy all rolled into one. And in that case, she was way too good for Anthony White. But moving to town, essentially stalking the guy, and being syrupy sweet about absolutely everything, I wasn't sure who the real Bree Brandon was. Can I do your hair for the ball? She asked me, out of the blue. I think Blake will faint when you walk in with a gorgeous updo complete with rhinestone clips. I shook my head. What are you talking about? Well, you need to do something with it besides a ponytail, silly. No, I'm not going to the ball. Bree looked at me like I had just told her I came from Mars. You have to go to the ball. It's the biggest event in town. Plus, it's the 150th year celebration. And didn't Blake ask you? He didn't ask me. He asked me if I was going, but he didn't ask me, you know? Oh no, I thought. Was he asking me to the ball? Please come. Bree held prayer hands at her mouth. Pretty please. Everyone will be there. You can't miss it. Everyone will be there, I repeated. That was an interesting point. She smiled and nodded. Bree hadn't succeeded in creating the fear of missing out in me, but she was right. Everyone in town would be at the event, including, I wondered, the person guilty of murdering Art. I heard the deep rumbling of an old vehicle coming up the street through the salon's open door. As I looked outside, I saw Malcolm Griggs driving the Opera House van slowly up Main Street. He was in an usher uniform, but wasn't doing it justice. As he passed the salon, he looked our way with a frown. Do you know Malcolm Griggs? I asked Bree. Of course, he's another friend of Anthony's and Art's. I swallowed and felt goosebumps rise on my arms. It seemed that Anthony was right in the thick of things. Then I quickly reminded myself that Anthony was trying to market his stupid development plan. He was probably meeting with everyone in town about that. How long have Malcolm and Anthony known each other? I asked her. Not long. Malcolm only came to town a few months back. Blake introduced him to Anthony, and Anthony suggested him to Mariah when she needed some help at the Opera House. So both White brothers were associated with creepy Malcolm. The shop's phone began to ring. Bree excused herself to answer it. While she scheduled a client, I thought over Anthony's connections. I also considered his convenient timing in tagging along with me to Lakeview. I wanted to know more. I've been so busy, Bree said when she finished the call. I'm working around the clock to get everyone in shape for the party. Back to Malcolm, Bree, I said. What do you think of him? He can be a big grump, but I like him. This wasn't helpful at all. But what was I thinking? Bree was going to paint a rosy picture of anyone. Bree came over to me and began pulling small pieces of my hair up behind my ears. She was tilting her head one way and then the other, apprising her options. I eased away and took back control of my tresses. Bree, it's nice of you to offer to help with my hair for the party, I said, but... Before I could finish, Bree turned and flopped down into the salon chair like a spoiled child. You have to come. I don't want to do it by myself. What's that supposed to mean? I asked. I could use a friend, that's all. And then the tears started. Big, sloppy sobs burst out of tiny, bubbly Bree. It's his parents, she hiccuped. They hate me. Oh, dear. I went to stand beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. I'm sure that's not true, I said, knowing full well it probably was. According to the Whites, no one was good enough for their boys. They want him to marry someone more, less, well, different from me. I went to get her a tissue, When she blew her nose, I expected the tweet of a tea kettle, but it was more like the honk of a foghorn. Black mascara ran down her pink cheeks. Little did Bree know, having me at her side would not make the Whites like her any better. I blamed them for much of what happened to me years ago. Now, I was a grown-up who wasn't afraid to tell them so. Maybe on second thought, I could help Bree face them. And maybe I should. I might as well stay until after the Founders' Day festivities, including the ball, I told her. As if in slow motion, Bree turned her face up to look at me. She was a mess, but the agonizing look on her face bled into a grin. She began to clap and bounce in the chair. Dread settled over me. What would I wear? I only had a suitcase full of t-shirts and jeans back at Jericho House. As if reading my mind, Bree began one of her chatty rants explaining that she had it all figured out. Don't you worry about a thing. I have the perfect dress for you to borrow. What are you, about a size 6? I nodded, trying to keep up with her high-speed rambling. And for shoes, she glanced at my feet. Size 8, I see. Same as Jill from the bakery. She's a doll. You'd love her. I'll visit her closet for a pair. Oh, Chloe, I can't wait. Blake is going to faint when he sees you. Little did Bree know, Blake's reaction was of little interest to me. I was more intrigued by the idea that Art's killer would likely be in attendance. And, of course, Chief Garner. All right, you guys, that does it for Chapter 30 of A History of Murder. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you enjoyed today's episode, would you mind hitting that thumbs up down below? And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe so you never miss a chapter. We're getting close to the end. We're almost there. And I will see you next time for Chapter 31. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.